Welcome back to another episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. I'm here with Coach Cornelia, all the way in Romania.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
And my name is Coach Mika Ranjit, and I am here in the United States. This episode, we're going to be talking about the benefits of life coaching. And since we're both life coaches, I'm having a big, thoughtful conversation about those benefits. But at first, I want to hand it over to Cornelia. She's got a little bit more experience than I do, and so I want to hear her take on the benefits of life coaching.
Thank you, Micah. Listen, I was thinking earlier about the differences between us and therapists. And what I like about what we are doing is that we bring the solution in the moment. So in a session with a life coach comes someone who needs a right now solution or a future solution for a goal that they have. And this is something that I love, like fixing problems and helping the client to do it. This is the main thing that I like, the fastness of things. Like you have a problem now, you come to a life coach and you can fix it. If you're open-minded, if you're willing to put up the work, you can fix it. So this is what I like the most in our profession.
Absolutely.
What do you think? How do you feel about it?
Well, I definitely like the solution aspect of like the life coaching, but I think it's about empowering the client to their own solution. So like in our methodology of life coaching, we basically facilitate the client's own like growth. So they in this methodology, we elicit through questions responses that the client has, and usually the client can come to find their own solution just by us asking the right probing questions. And I think that's also a big aspect of like leadership, even though we're not necessarily leading, and we'll probably do another episode on leadership later, is that we empower people to find solutions themselves rather than control the narrative and control the situation all at once.
Yeah, actually, I had a client who came and said, I have this problem, what should I do? And I said, what do you think you should do? And they said, I came here to get a solution. So there are people that are expecting a solution coming from our part, but we have to remember that each problem or each individual has a different solution for their problems, right? So you cannot there is not a universal recipe that you can give to someone and just fix everything. You have to work a little bit on it. You have to what they do most is that they introspect, and sometimes it's a book that says that the questions are the answers. So it might help the client with these questions. It might help the client to get new perspectives, new ideas about what they try to do. And this is how they get to the solution. So we will never give, a professional life coach, right? Because you have these TikTok life coaches that are giving solutions live. Like people are writing in chat, my cat died, what should I do? And the life coach is giving a solution, bury the cat or whatever.
Right.
That's not what the professional life coach does. So we are there for the support and accountability. That's maybe the most important thing about accountability.
So talk to me about accountability. Like, how do we hold our clients accountable to themselves? How do we do that?
That's a hard part because at first, at least some of my clients, at first they were like feeling that I'm trying to control what they are doing. And I had to explain them for a few times that this is what a life coach means. Someone who is asking you, did you think about it? Did you do that step? Did you find the solution for that thing? Because as we talked in the last hour in our last podcast, people are procrastinating so much.
Mm-hmm.
We like to postpone things. I mean, it's not that we like it, it's life. And it's so good to have someone in the corner just asking you from time to time, how are you doing? How things are going? How are things going?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going on the road with a problem and so on? So how we do it exactly is how I'm doing it. I have a 20 minutes checking point with them every month, and we talk about only about this.
Mm-hmm. So that's when you like bring them in and then you ask them like, what did you do? Why did you do it?
Yeah.
Not necessarily how they feel about it, but like, what's the outcome of the solution? Is there any changes that need to be made? Stuff like that. That's what you would, are those typical questions or are there other questions that you might ask?
Why not is one of the main questions that I have usually when they say I didn't do it. Why not? Because it's important for anyone to understand why do they stop at one point and don't try to move forward. Some maybe are too busy, some are afraid of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the fear of success with the leaders,
Mm-hmm.
which and it in sport, I know in sports it's the same, the fears of success. So this question, why not? I'm using this question pretty often.
I think that's a pretty good question because like a lot of people don't really ask themselves that question. And in fact, I wanted to go back to the accountability. I mean, we're still in accountability, but I wanted to kind of like go back to the core aspect of it is that a lot of people don't ask themselves that question, but when they get asked these specific questions, it triggers a response. Now, when people are confronted with the truth or confronted with conflicting information that what they're used to, especially if they're the ones where the information is coming from, they can experience that as like internal pain. So like their brain will feel being wrong as
Mhm.
pain. And I think that's interesting to note. And we're not trying to get clients in that pain area. We're trying to bring a level of self-awareness to the client for their decisions through the questions, through the probing, through the walking through the accountability to help them achieve whatever goal that they're trying to do, increase their productivity, improve. I mean, even in relational stuff. I mean, there's like some extra education that could be used for like relationship life coaching, business management life coaching. But I think as just like a standard, like a core life coach, we can touch on all of those subjects a little bit, but to like dive into even the deeper topics, the deeper, more career oriented, relational oriented, right? Those things. Um, there's more education that we can get to dive into those things. Just so we
Yeah.
know, just so we know what questions to ask the client, because we can go into it blind and just ask them questions, and then we may not be asking the right questions, but they internally know the answer to, but because we don't have the knowledge of the situation, uh, that we couldn't provide them, we couldn't ask the questions for them to generate the answer. I say generate lightly. It's more like we're asking them to introspect within
Mm-hmm.
themselves to find out what their solution to their problem is rather than telling them, and I think you touched on this,
Yeah.
when they come to you, they say, "Hey, look, I'm looking for a solution," and you see it online where people like they come in and they ask people for a solution to a problem. The person provides a solution, um, may not be the solution the client wanted. So then you'll see that roadblock, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see that roadblock, you'll see that resistance, you'll see that hesitation to initiate, not because the idea is necessarily bad, but because it's not the idea that the client wanted. And that's a key factor about it is that the client had so that resistance that they have is because they had a solution in their mind They just didn't know how to communicate that situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And life coaches can help clients communicate that solution out, but also back to themselves, thus encouraging personal growth, introspection. And at that point, maybe even stress management.
Yeah, the stress management is so real on this one because we all know the answers to our problems. Deep down inside, we do. So when someone helps us to get them out and to find the to I mean not to find them because as we were talking about, we already know the answers. It's just maybe accepting them,
Mhm.
uh, just telling them out loud, and then you feel less stressed because you're not searching anymore. Then you start to search something else after you find the answer. You search for the solution. Uh, but I want to go back a little bit to the pain you were talking about.
Mhm.
You already know me pretty well now, and I have some unorthodox ideas and methods. I prefer to have a client who suffers with me in the session, and
Mhm.
I'm telling them this rather than suffering in the other areas, like for example the leaders. I rather them suffering with me with me trying to get them accountable and ask him this is a painful question, why not? Because then you can find out you're lazy most of the times. I am lazy most of the times. This is my answer to why not.
Mhm.
Um, and different as other answers, and it can be painful when you get that answer from the client. So you rather suffer and get through this pain with me in the session rather than going to the office and having problems over there with your team, in the leaders cases, or it doesn't matter, no matter what job you have, or at
So
home, or
you're saying like you want to have them, and I guess I agree with this. You want to have the client have their struggles with you in a,
mm-hmm,
it's not like a controlled environment. It's more like a introspecting productivity environment rather than
mm-hmm.
like putting their feet to the fire. They're up there, like they need to do this and then they collapse. So that makes sense.
That's why they are coming to me, right? To find them, to help them grow. You cannot grow without pain. That's for sure. And the diamonds, the diamonds are just coming up with pressure and a lot of pressure. So that's how I feel it. I rather keep them with these struggles in my session, even if it's uncomfortable, maybe sometimes for the life coach as well.
Mhm.
um, but this is what they need from me, right?
Mhm.
Every time they get to another step, they can say that's another struggle that how is it called? Not passed out. You get over another pain that you had, another struggle that you had.
Mhm. Absolutely.
It's the thing that with a professional life coach, you have a safe space. You are sure that you're not judged, so you can feel and you can do whatever you feel in the moment
Mhm.
in order to get a solution.
When you do your sessions, do you, and I know this isn't necessarily a benefit, are you in a sitting environment, a moving environment, or are you like let's say at walking at a park? Are you sitting at a table? Do you have an office? Where do you usually take your client?
It depends on the client. For example, I had a client who wanted to do the sessions in the car, in front of a lake, on a lake, because the water was making him calm
Mhm.
and feeling safe. So it depends so much. For example, the teenagers sessions, I only have them online because they are from all over the world, so I cannot do it in person.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't have a certain office here in Romania. I used to have one in Denmark, but in Romania I don't have one. So it depends on the client.
Absolutely. I've been known to take my clients to wherever they feel like they're going to overcome whatever obstacle that they like, whatever's going to help them focus. So for me personally, and I'm not saying I'm in a life coach session, but for me personally, I focus best in motion, like
Mm-hmm.
forward. I mean, it's probably has something to do with like my ADHD because I constantly need like something new happening, right? So driving for me is where I think really, really well. Or walking next to the beach or in a forest, right? Greens and blues calm me down. So that would make sense to kind of like bring me into a space where I can actually think. I've known clients that want to take walks on the beach, walks downtown. The one thing I try to avoid is places that are going to be too busy.
Public.
Too busy,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, too public, too busy. Because then when we get to that point, the client again hits that brick wall where they don't want to dive too deep, maybe too painful, maybe they don't want to look bad. There's always something that can hinder that. I don't have any offices, but I have been known to go to clients' house and sit with them in their place where they feel most comfortable.
I was thinking about you as a life coach. I think this procrastination, you find it very often. It's not seldom. In my case, maybe it's more seldom because the leaders are more disciplined. The teenagers are. I'm not even talking to them about this because I'm expecting it to happen. So I
Mhm.
don't, for example, I don't do too much accountability with the teenagers because they need their own pace. They're still learning about life. You cannot expect them to be disciplined. The leaders are more disciplined, but I guess your clients, when they're coming in your programs, I guess they're more, at least I did it. Maybe you remember it. I did it so many times.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean they definitely. I mean there's a resistance, there's a procrastination. I'm a pusher, so like if I find something, I dig for it, right? So and that's where it gets kind of dicey with me because like when I say dicey, I say it encourages personal growth, it encourages enhanced decision making.
Mm-hmm.
But I can really get into finding that limit of my client's psyche and then like threading that very fine line of
Mm-hmm.
pushing them just to that limit and then like floating back off of that limit just ever so slightly and then pushing right up against it. And then I really try to get them to face themselves. And I'm real big into that. And I'm real big into presenting information um, that they can then use, like objective information, stuff that they can like, find that they can then use when they introspect. So I don't bring opinions, I bring facts, right? And then I will present those facts, push the boundary to that limit, and then watch my client introspect and evoke from themselves a solution.
Isn't it great to be a life coach? I
Yeah.
was thinking, I mean, I have my own therapist, and she's struggling with me sometimes because I'm very resistant to many things. Um, and I'm always asking her, aren't you trying to find the solutions for me with me, together with me, to my traumas, for example,
Mhm.
right? And she said, that's not my goal. My goal is for you to heal and whatever. Um, I could never do it. I'm so desperate to see. This is why I talked about the fastness of our results,
Mhm.
uh, because this is what I like to do: fix the problem in the moment. Being someone who's been in therapy for so many years, um, I need solutions, fast solutions, and
Mhm.
this is why I I fell in love with this profession.
Mhm.
Uh, Again, we are not giving the solutions. We are
Right.
just a support for the client to find themselves their own. For example, with the leaders, right? What does the leader want? They want mostly to get their team very strong.
Mhm.
It's a different solution for each of them because every leader is everyone is different, and everyone has the different team.
Hmm.
So you cannot give them a recipe for how to make a strong team. No.
Right. And so, like you talked about leaders, right? You specialize in leaders, teenagers, and then obviously you can life coach, anything. I have specialties in narcissistic abuse recovery coaching, like health coaching. I actually have a certification specifically for health coaching. Um,
Yeah.
don't necessarily deal in relationships or business models, but the health and dealing with, dark triad personalities are two different realms of like life coaching. And I can life coach, just like a broad spectrum, goal production, enhanced communication skills, productivity, all those things. When I'm doing health coaching, I find a lot of resistance to change, because and that's because people are set in their ways, right? And then they want to change. I have somebody that reached out to me recently, and they want to book sessions. I'm noticing that every time I've checked in, let's get you scheduled, let's get you scheduled, there's something. I don't necessarily know if those somethings are, like they could be absolute, problematic things to hinder him scheduling with me for, training sessions, personal training sessions. However, with that also being said, the more that he pushes it off, the more comfortable he will be pushing it off later and later and later, right? So we've talked about that procrastination. We've talked about and I'm neither here nor there. I'm not even I'm not weighing it as a positive or negative whether he books with me or not. He either does or he doesn't, you know. So um it will be totally his choice whether he does. However,
Sure.
I am noticing that he's pushed it off twice, booking a session, and I've even incentivized the session. So there's something there that I can't really get into that's holding him back. He's listed reasons, but there's other things that could be at play that are holding him back from moving in that direction. In narcissistic abuse recovery coaching, right? I have a basically educate, empower, and elevate program that is information delivered, right? So it's researched information, that is given to the client, allows them to then make identifications of different manipulation tactics and techniques. And then when I empower them, I'm basically showing them, bringing their confidence back. Their own confidence is kind of tucked away because of the abusive situation. I try to evoke that back out of the client. And then I try to help them goal set for the future. So it's two different types of coaching. Um, but
Yeah.
both of them, like for me, I'm waiting for this individual. He said he wanted to book. He signed the paper. So I'm waiting for this individual to book with me. Right? He can or he can't. I'll check in with him in another couple of weeks and see if he's ready. And I check in 3 times before. If a client says they're going to book, I will check in 3 times. If they say, they push it off the third time, then I don't reach out anymore. So, and that's kind of like that's just a personal preference, right? If I ask you to hang out and you don't want to hang out 3 times, I stop asking, right? Giving you an opportunity, you don't want to take it, that's fine. Set it aside. Narcissistic abuse recovery coaching, there's a lot of moving forward and moving back in that one. So
Yeah.
being able to identify when somebody is moving forward and when they're regressing back into, the abusive cycle is key to being able to tailor to them what they need at any given point in time, not just from me, but what they need from themselves to encourage them to keep going away from that abusive situation.
while you were talking about your narcissistic abuse recovery program, I was thinking how afraid I would be to come to you on this program. And I think most of the victims are feeling like this. Um, I wouldn't prefer to talk. I didn't get into it with my therapist either. That's how afraid I am to go back in time and think about all of those things. I think it's, for me at this point, I feel it's impossible. Um, but it would be so great to get, like you said, get over this resistance and get into the program and then manage to get rid of some of the traumas that I had without having to be in therapy per se, you know what I mean? Just practical things.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
Well, I mean, like the first part of the program is education, right? So when we're in that phase of the program, you're in that phase of the program, I'm basically presenting to the client, to you, information of like abuse terminology,
Mhm.
tactics, how they look from the outside, right? So in those aspects, you could say, oh, okay, I experienced that. That happened to me, right? You can start to relate those things. And since they all follow similar playbooks, you know, uh, the education portion's pretty big, but once you start to relate to those, then we take that and we move you into the empower part. How do we protect ourselves from those specific things? How do we not engage with that? How do we counter that manipulation? How do we become non reactive? Right. And then once you get there, third part of the program, and I maybe going back for you, you'd be more interested in the education part because the empower and elevate, you're already past that. You removed yourself from the situation, right? So this program's really designed for somebody that is like made the decision to get out of this abusive relationship and they need to get out now and they're having struggles figuring out how to get out. So I
And
advertise
what
as much as possible.
another struggle, I think another struggle is for them to find what's the truth.
Mhm.
When you're going out of a narcissistic relationship, you don't know what the truth is anymore about yourself or about the reality around you.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's everything's all jumbled. I mean, typically a client has been gaslit to believe something. You're facing, cognitive dissonance, which is like looking at two people in one person and your brain has trouble deciding which one is which or which person is in existence. Um, Typically has, like there's so many different factors that are involved in that. But then when I look at this type of coaching, and then I look at like health coaching, which the two main things that I do are the narcissistic abuse recovery coaching and then like health coaching, which comes in individually, or I can bundle it with like personal training sessions.
Mhm.
With health coaching, I see people, they want a goal. So what the first thing I have them do is develop a goal, right? So I ask them, "Hey, what are your goals?" That's usually the besides, like, "Hey, like what are your time frames? What are we looking for?" Right? The first question I ask is, "What are your goals?" And they say, "Well, I don't know. I never thought about that." Right? So I ask them to give 5 SMART goals because typically a client's going to book for like a 5 session
Mhm.
package. So what I'll do is I will say you give me 5 goals and then tell me what your goals are, right? Once they give me that, then I can be like, okay, well, I don't ask them necessarily what should they do. They're with me to figure out what they need to do. But when they come to me for like health and wellness, I don't tell them what to do. I have nutritional guidance, but I don't tell them what to do. I
Mhm.
basically give them the option to do whatever they want. However, where I hold them accountable is I say, okay, well, here's what could change. Maybe we could change this a little bit. Maybe you need a little bit less of this, more of this, change this.
I think it's very hard to be a health coach and not give solutions. You have to be very, and you have to just
It's
influence the client.
yeah, it's very careful when
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
nuanced. It's very interesting. Because like when I'm doing personal training sessions, I'm literally telling the client what to do, right? As a health
Yeah.
coach, basically they tell me like that they have problems, if they have dietary goals they want to meet, if they have, what they tell me they have diseases, right? I look into those things and then I basically ask them because like typically they're dealing with like a doctor as well, right? I asked them like what are they looking for out of this program? Like how are they seeing themselves at the end of this program? And once we get those answers, what their goals are, then I can start to basically hold them accountable. I say, I give them a range of ideas and I present them out on the table, boom, on the table, right? And I say, okay, what of these ideas? Because obviously there's like certain things that need to be done, right? I let them
Yes.
find those certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they come back to me, I say, how did you do on that? How did you do? Like, did you complete this for yourself? I ask them, and if they, and again, yes, why not? Why didn't we do this this week? Why didn't we adjust this as you said you wanted to do? Right. And I'm a little bit more direct. So I like I said, I like to get people to that fine line and then like but right up against that tipping point, because that's like a gray area. I say it's like a gray area. That's like where the most growth happens. In other aspects of health
But
coaching,
that's where the pain is.
absolutely. In
Mm.
other aspects of health, and like you push them there and like they get to that point, sometimes they get angry, sometimes they get defensive. That's the body experiencing that pain. But if they weren't experiencing that pain, they wouldn't be knowing they're wrong at the same time, right? And not necessarily wrong, or that they weren't holding themselves accountable, or that they weren't working towards their goal as they said that they were going to. So there's that aspect of health coaching. There's another aspect where in fact, I do some research, I dive into some things, I find um, what can be done. I present that to the client and then I let them choose because there's certain things that have a guaranteed path. And I say guaranteed path, like I look up like what this disease is. I look up what, like, let's say diabetes, right? I look up solutions for those things and then I present them to the client. I say, what of these solutions do you want to do and how do you want to do them? And then if they ask me how would I do it? I say, well, this isn't my health, it's yours. And then I turn it back to them. And then I try to get them to give me a response. If they don't know a specific, like how do I lower my blood sugar or how do I decrease my carb intake? Then I start asking questions about what's your diet? When do you
Mhm.
eat? I start asking those questions to try to figure out. And then I say, do you know, like, let's say if they're trying to drop their carb intake, do you know what is a carb? Do you know what in your diet is a carb? I'll have them write me their menu for the week so that way I can see what they're eating. And then I can say, okay, this is a carb. Do you need this here? And then I start asking those questions just to try to get them to see where they can make their own changes maybe the next week.
Yeah, I remember that about the carbs, and you asked me about it, and I'm not eating. I'm just rice and whatever. And you said, well, rice is a carb, so I didn't know about it. And sometimes you really don't know,
Mm-hmm.
so you need someone to tell you about it. And I haven't had that much rice lately because
Right.
of you.
Absolutely. I have been talking about like health coaching and narcissistic abuse coaching. We've done a podcast on teenagers, but why don't you tell us again a little bit more about life coaching with teenagers?
Coaching teenagers is my favorite job, to say like this. Because what I find in them is this new. They're always fresh. They're always fresh. But not fresh in the sense that you might think that they're very fresh, like physically. Like hello, no, they're very lazy and sleepy all the time. You know how the teenagers are, but they have fresh ideas they always have this hope for life. They are enthusiastic, much more than we are at our age, and somehow it fits me with how they feel every time we talk. What I also like about them, it's like they are like a blank page,
Mhm.
and they can start to paint their lives on it. It's so beautiful to watch the process. And I have some that I'm still talking with after after I had them 2 years ago in sessions. And they are so in such a great place. They still have goals and they still want to do great things, and they think big. It's something that we sometimes forget as grown-ups. We forget to think big.
Mhm.
I love working with teenagers much more than I admit, and I'm telling them, than with the leaders, because the leaders are coming with some patterns, and they think in some they have some patterns when they think, and it's very hard to pull them from there and work with it and try to change their perspective. But the teenagers are just like a blank page that you can work with. It's amazing.
And you have your own like program for teenagers on your website, right?
I have a few programs actually. It depends. I also do some one-on-one coaching with them if they want to, but
Mhm.
I prefer to work in groups because um, I'm teaching them to, for example, one of the main thing I'm teaching them is to hold the others accountable. So it's like a circle they do, and it's so great to watch it.
Mhm.
Um, but I do one-on-one as well. And besides the practical part that we do, like building confidence, time management, stress management, financial program, and yeah, I have many teenagers that are feeling alone or lonely, more likely lonely, and in group they can have friends. We play some games like one of their favorite game is to um let's say we choose a character and we wear it on our front forehead, and we have to behave with that person like they would be that character. It's so amazing to see how creative they can be.
Mhm.
They can learn so many things about life. So yeah, that's my favorite job to do, working with
With
teenagers.
teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be I mean, I could work with teenagers, um, but because of the very probing and very bringing people to that line, the very direct
Mm-hmm.
methodology of my coaching is probably more best reserved for like adults. Though I could work with teenagers, for instance, eliminating negative thought patterns, increasing goal productivity, and those kind of things. Maybe not necessarily primarily, but I do think working with teenagers would be interesting. There'd be also some extra liability things that I'd have to generate in terms of documentation for working with teenagers. Especially at least here in the United States, like you have to have parental permission. They have to be able to be there if they want to be there and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Same here. I mean, the parents are the one that are buying the sessions, not the teenagers.
Mhm.
And for me, and I'm very straight with them as well. The biggest problem we have in the sessions is with the parents. Um, this is why when we do those podcasts and we talk about parenting, I sometimes maybe I'm not very respectful to the parents, and I'm not even trying to be, because I see on first hand how the teenagers feel today in the families that they live in. So the parents are the main problem.
With teenagers, aren't parents always the problem, or the doctors, or like that other guy over there, gal over there? They're always
Mhm.
like, there's always something that they're antagonistic towards. But yes, it definitely generates in the household. I've seen that. I've experienced that. Like as teenagers ourselves, having been through that, we can remember back to when like the parents didn't understand us, or like this or that. And in some degree, I think you're right. The parents have this. I mean, obviously it's the parents' job to provide the child with the moral compass, the life skills, those kind of things. Even if we do see a drop off of that, right?
Mm.
But there's also the influence that they're preventing the teenager from, and I think this is what you're seeing in your sessions, preventing the teenager from being themselves. So like the parent is so overbearing in certain aspects of life, the teenager cannot be themselves, cannot grow, cannot learn, and cannot move forward because the parent has created this like cloud or umbrella structure over the teenager.
And I get them, Micah. I get them because of the times that we live in. Um, I don't feel safe in this society. I don't feel that my kid is safe in this society. So I don't see a better future at the moment for us, at least in Europe. So I get these parents, but at the same time, we have to fight with this need to protect and be like a helicopter parent and just let them be themselves. Even, I mean, they only learn from mistakes.
Mhm.
There's no way they can learn otherwise, only from mistakes. And think about and this is the example I give to the parents. Think about like you're getting your driver's license and going with the car for the first time you drive, okay? And someone comes up from the corner and you don't see it. The next time you're gonna know that you have to look on on that point, right? It's the same with the teenagers. They have to like drive through life and see what dangers they can see, they can fight with or whatever. So it's hard, but we have to let them be
Mhm.
themselves.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of parents have a hard time doing that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, there is that protective circuit, but there's also that like they need to go out and like, make these experiences, interact with this, even if it's like a relational mistake,
Mm-hmm.
relational, let's say two teenagers are hanging out, boyfriend and girlfriend, and then like the boy starts to talk to another girl without breaking up with his girlfriend, and then his girlfriend finds out, and then he realized, then she breaks up with him, right? That is a lesson learned, right? I mean, it's one of the harder lessons to learn. Some people don't learn it; they just keep making the same mistakes, following the same patterns. But ideally, he went through that experience, lost out on a relationship with that girl because he was talking, got caught at his locker talking to another girl. Right now, what? Now he's got to go and do it all over again, initiate contact with somebody else. Probably neither of those girls are talking to him because the other girl found out that he had a girlfriend and he was right. You know what I mean? So like you see, I mean, it could be vice versa. It could have been a girl that was doing the same thing. I'm assuming, and through experience, that it happens on both sides of the aisle. Men and women do that. Um, it could be something simple like not cheating on a test. You cheated on a test, you failed, right? It could be that, let's say they're a skateboarder, they went skateboarding, they miscalculated something, they learned from it, right? That kind of mistake can happen. However, the parents need to insulate the kids is increased by society, and I think you made a good point about that. And this is a little off topic from the life coaching part, but because society has become more dangerous, um, I think the more regulation that we have, the less we have, a less empowered society we have. So the more
Mm-hmm.
government, the more laws, the more regulations you have, the less empowered the people are in that society to protect themselves, to do what's necessary to survive. Right? There's always going to be bad actors, but when the good people that just want to live a peaceful life are hindered from protecting themselves, then you've created a society that favors the bad actors, and that's not great. So I understand what you're saying with like people growing up not feeling safe. Um, where life coaching can change that aspect is eliminating negative thought processes. So
Mhm.
we can't always be in this negative mindset. It's okay to be cautious, but if it's so cautious that it's hindering your ability to go out and live your fullest life, then that's a problem. And I think life coaching is something that could definitely work in that realm by eliminating those negative thought processes to drive action
Mhm.
to get the client to be out in society, live their fullest life. What do you think?
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And life is a is a learning process. We are still learning. And I remember my grandmother, she was 98, and she was saying, "I'm still learning things," because new things appear, of course, all the time, and we have to learn them. So what if if we would be caught in put in a like a cage and just watch the process happening, not experiencing it? We would
Mhm,
never learn anything.
mhm,
So life is a learning process. I think um, changing the perspective is the best thing you can get from a life coach session. Uh, and there is another question that I have for my clients, and I love the answers are so diverse. What's the worst thing that can happen?
mhm,
It's such a great question, I think, uh, because listen, like I remember my first life coaching session, and someone asked me, "What are your goals?" Oh, I have so many goals, and they said, "Tell me some, few of them." And among them, I said, "I want to be a jewelry maker." Oh, really? Do you think you'll be good at it? Yes, I would be great at it. Can you draw me a ring, please? Yes, of course, I could draw you anything. I'm so passionate about jewelries. And I started to draw. And then my drawing was awful. As you can imagine, something horrible. And then I realized, without anyone telling me this, that you cannot have any goal. I mean, you cannot have, you cannot be short, very short, and want to play in NBA.
mhm,
Uh, that's when I realized this. So it was such a great thing for me to realize that, and such a relief, because we want to do so many things in life. And sometimes we just have to have someone to guide us. And this is why I think this profession is so great and so beautiful, because you have this safe space, no judgmental. You can be yourself, you can say whatever you want, you can feel the pain, the struggles, get over everything, have a partner in the life coach you choose, and maybe one day seeing your goals fulfilled. That's the
mhm.
greatest thing, I think.
Absolutely. A definite big positive change. I mean, that's the main driving force behind like life coaching. Because like therapists, behavior therapists, like trauma therapists, those kind of things, psychologists deal in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
In actual diagnosis, they deal in person's history, they deal in feelings, they deal in all manner of things that we don't. So
Yeah,
I
sure.
think it's good because when we work with a client, we're working just like my narcissistic abuse recovery program from one place to another. But we're not just going A to B, we're with them every step of the way. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is important because we help them help themselves. And again, I bring that back in from the beginning of the podcast. And that I think is probably the best thing that anybody can share with somebody else is you just heard me talk about society being so big that the individual is disenfranchised and disempowered. I like to look at it the other way. Somebody comes to me, how can I empower them? How can I elevate them to make what they want a reality? So
Mm-hmm.
it's, I mean, like I'm there. It's kind of like I'm participating, but they're doing the work. And I think that's also something is that if you come to a life coach, expect to do the work. If you come to us for a solution, we're going to ask you to get to start looking to see if you can find your solution. And that's not to say that we don't do anything. We do a lot in the life coaching profession.
Mhm.
However, we may see things that the client does not. And our job is to help them see it for themselves within
Yeah.
them.
You know what's another great thing that I love in life coaching is the power to listen. Uh, except my therapist, maybe my husband sometimes, and my daughter, I don't have anyone to talk about too much about. I mean, people are busy. They have their lives, they have their own problems. You don't sit around and just talk for hours to someone. When you come to a life coach, you are listened to. So someone is actively listening to you. Why am I saying actively? Because then we come up with a question, right? And see where it goes. So being a good listener as a life coach. So for anyone who is trying to find a life coach, find someone who is a good listener, who knows how when to keep the space. Do you remember in our when we were getting certified, do you remember how hard it was to hold the space when no one was talking?
Hmm. Yes, I do remember that.
Hardest thing as a life coach, when the clients when the client doesn't have anything to say or doesn't know what to say, you have to shut up and wait for the client. And it's so hard to do.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely found it hard sitting there in class because they're like, okay, go into these one-on-ones. And this is just
Mhm.
from our training experience. So like go into these one-on-ones and then find a place where, I mean, we're both working towards a coaching certification, but you're going to life coach somebody. Find a place where they need the space held for them, but they
Mhm.
don't need anything asked. So, I mean, that was hard because like you sit there and you're constantly being like listening for those questions. And I guess that's a good thing that you asked brought in is that a client comes to us, they feel heard, right?
Mhm.
They have a space where they're heard. They're not being diagnosed, right? In therapy session or psychologist session or doctor session. They're being heard and then they're being asked a question. Now, we as life coaches are actively listening, as you said, for what could be the next question. Where does the client want to go? Where
Mhm.
do they need to be? Well, when we hit that area, we're constantly looking. So, yes, it is absolutely hard to sit there and hold the space. And sometimes it could be a client. I've worked with a client that started to tear up, started to cry during the session. So then you have to sit there and hold that space for them, know that they're supported and heard. They know that they're supported and heard, but they also know that they have that space to like feel those emotions. And like I said, we don't deal in those emotions specifically, but what we do is we recognize them, acknowledge them, and then when the client's ready to move forward, we move forward with the client.
Beautifully said. Yes, that's so true. And usually those are the moments when you hold the space and the client is not talking and you're not talking. Those are the moments where something great happens,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it's like a real it's an intimate connection, but it's also like a place of growth. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily that boundary line that I'm always talking about, but
Mhm.
it is there's a lot going on there. A lot of interaction between two people, a lot of interaction between the client and themselves. And
Exactly.
I think that's very important to recognize.
Yeah. And the fact that so again, we don't talk in those moments. Like a therapist is giving you some napkins, you cry and they cry with you sometimes and so on. We are just observers, so you can cry for the whole session. It's fine. You don't have to stop. You don't have to feel the pressure to stop, to answer the questions, to look for why am I crying? Why am I doing this? You just be in the moment, cry, and then like you said so beautiful, we just get to the move to the next step.
Absolutely.
If you want to have a life coach, try to find a certified one. There's so
Mm.
many scams on the market right now, and it might hurt you. and your money might be wasted, of course. So try
Mhm.
to get a certified life coach who knows what they're doing. We
Absolutely.
follow rules, we follow ethics, we have some very good morals, most of us. So a certified life coach is the best in any
Mhm.
case.
And you've got an ICF member credential. I am certified through CLCI. I think we both got the certification through the same
Yeah,
place, but then you also now have an ICF credential. So I'm working towards it.
yeah, you'll
But
get it.
you know, like we're getting there.
Yeah, sure.
Well, if you guys have any questions about life coaching, we're two life coaches right here. Please don't forget to check out our website in the description box below. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you do have any additional questions for us that you want to put on public forum, leave them in the comments section below, and we will try to answer those. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.